For years, Bill Gates warned of a new virus that would cripple the world. This year, his predictions came true.
The damage economically and health-wise has been far greater than I would have expected with a virus like this.
The tech mogul turned philanthropist set up the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation 20 years ago. It's been instrumental in the global fight to rid the world of some of its most dangerous infectious diseases, including polio and malaria. Now he's turning his attention to a global vaccination program to end the COVID-19 pandemic, which may be sooner than many realize.
The population of Africa is set to almost double by 2050, raising fears that progress in fighting poverty and disease will be reversed. So what can be done to ensure that poverty doesn't increase? And how can a disproportionately large youth population help drive progress? With me to discuss all of this and more is Bill Gates. Bill, are we at a turning point where regression is a real risk?
Well, first, the progress over the last several decades has been pretty amazing, both reducing childhood death, getting kids in school, getting agricultural productivity up, and reducing extreme poverty. But it's really Africa that still has a doubling in population to 2050 and probably another doubling to 2100, where you really have to do a good job if you're trying to get these extreme poverty rates down. So if we don't do better in investing in human capital in Africa, yes, the number of people in extreme poverty is actually going to go up.
Should the solution, or should more solutions be focused on slowing that growth? So, for example, increasing reproductive rights for women or spreading the access to contraceptives, because it seems that, is it correct that no amount of investment can really keep pace with that population growth?
What we do between now and 2050 with education, with economic growth, with health and nutrition, that'll really set the course for moderating the population growth between 2050 and 2100. But it's really a virtuous cycle, letting women have reproductive health tools that they want, educating girls, raising agricultural productivity, getting these malnutrition interventions on a much greater scale than we have today. Those are the things you would want to do anyway. It turns out that by doing those well, you also set the population growth rate coming down quite a bit. And so it just makes it that much more imperative that we invest in the human capital now, and so that the challenge of what under any scenario will be fairly high population growth, that you're able to benefit from all those young people making a big contribution to their country.
Why isn't that happening? I mean, you put it very well. Why aren't we spending the billions to save the trillions? When you talk to prime ministers, presidents, as I'm sure you do, why isn't this happening?
All the countries but the U.S. do need to think about why weren't they able to orchestrate early high-risk money. I mean, the UK did better over time. Germany did some things, but the U.S. is, thank goodness that BARDA, with all its imperfections, was there to move things ahead. This was a huge favor that was done for the entire world, and it's done, so we can globally take on the challenge. Many of these vaccines are fairly low cost to make. AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Novavax. Sanofi, all of those will be in the $2 to $3 marginal cost range. So you'll pay a somewhat higher price in rich and middle income to defer the fixed costs of the development. But for the very poorest countries where you just go for marginal costs, these vaccines will be quite cheap. So, 10 or 12 billion total to buy the vaccine for the developing world would almost certainly suffice. But without the U.S. taking its leadership role, as it's done in most global health things, it's been hard to get that together. So that's why I'm hoping the U.S. in its supplemental bill or somehow will step up and lead here, because that's still that's what would really get it, so we get that full 12 billion and we're not financially limited in dosing the world.
There are pockets, and significant pockets, of the country where vaccines aren't happening because of those, the anti-vaxxers, or whatever you want to call them, who have made significant headway in trying to convince parents they shouldn't vaccinate children. I was just looking at new data today from Orange County, California, with more than a few schools showing between 40% and 60% children not vaccinated.
You could say we're a victim of success. In the countries where you have measles all the time, nobody gets confused about this.
Do you get mad about it?
I get more mad about the deaths we're not avoiding. I spend my time on the countries where you still have, in the case of measles, over 300,000 kids dying a year. In the case of diarrheal diseases, over 1 million a year. There's 6 million kids a year still dying. Why aren't we getting vaccines out in Africa for diarrhea, for respiratory disease? Why don't we yet have a vaccine for malaria? Those are the things that I push forward. I wouldn't say I get angry, but I'm really impatient that we're not moving as fast as I'd like.
Parents of the 28 children who suffered paralysis after being treated at Akitelesit dispensary in Teso North Sub-County are appealing to the national government to intervene and have Busia County government pay them 42 million shillings awarded by the court. The money, they say, will go a long way in providing specialized needs for their children. Here are the details.
It has been an agonizing 4 years for the family of Keta Tenge and 27 others. The 2015 jab completely took a toll and a turn on their lives, and since then, their parents say they have known no peace of mind.
Hospitali wanakuambia unapeleka kwa hii hospitali, wanakuambia atipeleke kwa ile hospitali. Unaenda huko, ati mara mtoto hana ugonjwa kwa mwili, lakini mtoto unaona mtoto anaumia.
Across the village, the misery pans out all too well. Pamela Omekede, another parent, heaps the blame on the Busia County government, despite a court order that they be compensated for the negligence of the county health staff and pay 42 million shillings. Very little has been done.
Watataka mtoto akufe ili waanze moja moja kufe ama watafanya nini? Na tunafikiri watoto wanasema watoto ndio kitu muhimu sana kwa hii kaunti yetu ya Busia. Wanasemanga ati wache watoto wakubwa, watoto wadogo waje kwako. Sasa kwa nini wametusahau?
In their conditions, the affected children require specialized attention. Constantly on medication and other specialized needs, the parents' meager resources are depleted. The county, they say, keeps on making promises that it has never bothered to fulfill.
County inatudanganya. Juzi alituambia ati baada hii tu mwezi ati kawa watatupea pesa ya kusaidia mtoto Hizo kitu mpaka sasa hivi hata tuone chochote ametupea.
Award ambayo court ilitoa tangu wakati ule mpaka sasa hivi haijaweza kuheshimiwa na serikali ya kaunti ya Busia, ila wanaendelea kutoa uongo ambao hawatekelezi.
With the Busia County government having not paid, the 28 children can only wish for a better life. Their happy childhood memories already dealt a blow by the damaging job in 2015.
When we were introducing malaria vaccine, my husband persisted to say, I'm going to get that vaccine. And I had to stop him. I said, no, you are of age.
The way we administer malaria vaccine is the same the way we administer other vaccines. So the caregivers are not husband. They are not worried. They are okay with the vaccine.
Some children did survive the botched vaccinations last month and will recover, but 15, all under the age of 5, died from fever, vomiting, and diarrhea.
This tragic event is as big as what we have seen.
The inoculations took place in a remote village nearly 300 kilometers east of the capital, Juba. The contaminated vaccine caused sepsis, a blood infection.
Human errors contributed to the unfortunate deaths of the children, and namely, the use of unskilled and untrained personnel.
Among those administering the vaccine to 300 children was a 12-year-old, and the same syringe was used repeatedly for 4 days. Syringes are not meant to be reused. In their initial findings, investigators say that's what contaminated the measles vaccine, which killed the children. A commission set up by South Sudan's government, the World Health Organization, and UNICEF is also looking at other problems.
The vaccines were stored in a building with no cold chain facilities for 4 days. This means that the vaccines were not maintained at the recommended temperature.
The vaccination campaign was organized after a measles outbreak killed 70 children earlier this year. A shortage of doctors and an ongoing civil war are being cited as 2 reasons why the world's youngest nation is unable to deliver adequate and effective health care. Paul Chadurji on Al Jazeera.
Enough. The solutions to Africa's problems lie in Africa itself. It doesn't lie along the corridors of the World Bank. It doesn't lie in the inner sanctum of the Chinese Presidium. Nor does it lie in the sand dunes of Mars. It lies right there in Africa. Now let me give you an example. Total foreign aid to Africa from all sources amounts to $30 billion a year. That's what comes into Africa as foreign aid. But Africa's begging bowl leaks. It leaks horribly. China was growing very, very rapidly, and it needed resources. And Africa had the resources. So China saw an opportunity. Who wouldn't? I don't blame them for it. They saw an opportunity. So they came to Africa and started to woo African leaders with euphonious verbiage and diplomatic platitudes. They started telling African leaders that, well, China is not a colonial power, conveniently forgetting about Tibet. They told African leaders that, well, we are here to trade on equal terms. And they declared 2006 as the Year of Africa. They held a conference in Beijing. And African leaders took the bait, miffed that the West was imposing conditionalities on aid, and also believing in the fallacious notions that the enemy of my enemy must be my friend. 40 African leaders trekked to Chinese and threw themselves at the hand of China, at the feet of China, signing deals. A blizzard of deals were signed for oil, for bauxite, for timber in Nigeria, Angola, Guinea, Mozambique, Gabon, so many countries.
High volume vaccines often get down to cost way less than $1. And you give them many at once. And so even the overall delivered cost is very low. And it prevents children from ever getting the disease. We need to invent new vaccines, malaria, TB, AIDS, and a few other diseases. The science is the key. We need to make them affordable. And again, the donor generosity comes in through a group called Gavi that helps poor countries buy vaccines. And then finally, that delivery system, so that every mother knows to bring their child in for 4 different visits to get that full set of vaccines. All of those things have to do their piece. The presence of social media plus a pandemic is a combination that's never been tried before. And nobody would have predicted that I and Dr. Fauci would be so prominent in, really kind of evil theories about, did we create the pandemic? Are we trying to profit from it? And on and on. And so, I'm very surprised by that. I hope it goes away. I hope it doesn't hold back, mask wearing or seeking out vaccines. The percentage that's really misled by these conspiracy theories, it's unclear to me. There's millions of messages out there, where my name or Dr. Fauci's name is used, but do people really believe that stuff? We're going to have to get educated about this over the next year and understand, how does it change people's behavior? How should we have minimized this, either working with the social media companies or explaining what we were up to in a better way. From the foundation's point of view, the fact that he took that rescission of the global vaccine money, which is super, super important. The fact he rejoined the WHO, the fact that he's appointed smart people, the fact that Dr. Fauci will not be suppressed. And they'll take full advantage of Francis Collins and Dr. Fauci, who are wonderful people. In terms of the epidemic, it sometimes felt like they were the only sane people in the U.S. government. So this phase, even though, it's a huge challenge, now we have people who are allowed to, share the truth, and we can draw on the depth of CDC capabilities. Every politician is under pressure to go bid for their country, to get, further up in line, because the value of these vaccines, even in the case, when it's not the Gavi price, the value far exceeds the price in terms of countries getting back to normal. And the rich world countries will largely be out of it if we can get our vaccination levels up to 70 to 80%.
BNN.